Unlike what traditional wisdom tells you, old horses are in fact capable of learning new tricks, it just takes them longer. This is the Be Quiet Light-Based 900FX, and this is the Be Quiet Light-Based 900FX, and this is also the Be Quiet Light-Based 900FX. Yes, it took them some time, but Be Quiet's attempt of reimagining what a PC case could look like made them squeeze in a feature that I haven't seen before, because without even opening the case, you can easily shift between a standard right-hand standing, a reverse left-hand standing, and a flat-lying case, all within a minute and using only telekinesis. But before we talk about that, let's quickly go over the basics. The Light-Based 900 exists in two different versions, a DX and a FX. The difference isn't as big as you might think. The FX comes with 3 reverse spinning 140mm Lightwing LX fans on the side and a regular 140mm Lightwing LX in the back, and the DX version doesn't. Then there's a black and white version of each. Now, before we talk about anything specific, this thing is huge, like it's really huge. Already taking it out of the box was a challenge, and it's heavy, like really heavy. According to Be Quiet, this thing weighs almost 16 kilograms, which I would love to verify, but I'm pretty sure that this thing would just crush my precision scale. Standing like this on my table, it covers almost the full freaking depth. This thing is 465mm high, 324mm wide, and 524mm deep. So yes, this thing is an enormous case. That said, it doesn't have to look like this. The case does come in the same design that the trend is heading at right now. It's a dual chamber fish tank. We got 3.9mm thick tempered glass on one of the sides and the front, giving you that all-around look of all the components that you do want to look at, whilst hiding all of the dirty power and drive stuff in the back where nobody can see it. But the key feature of this case are the feet, because once you tip the case over, you can unlock them by twisting, and then you can just pull them out. And in case you wanted to go with a reverse build, you can just reattach them at the top, tip the whole case around, and voila! Reverse build. And if this still doesn't suit you, you can also remove the rubber protectors on the back panel of the case, attach the feet to the now visible holes, twist them into position, and voila, a flat-lying case. And that is a really cool feature. The feet add about 2 centimeters to whatever side you're attaching it to, so you got around 2 centimeters of breathable space for the fans if your build has fans on that side. And they are sturdy. They give the case a strong stand, and contrary to my initial fear, they are rather wide and long and strong, so you can, without a second thought, lift the case on one side, making the whole thing stand on just the edge of 2 of the feet without them snapping off. That being said, even if I'm doing it for the B-rolls here, and I can confirm that they are strong enough to be moved around after build, you would be much better off by choosing the end orientation of your PC before actually starting to build in it. It might even cause some trouble. Like, for example, if you got an AIO in the top and then you reverse the build, and then, yeah, congrats, you got a time bomb. But not everything is perfect. In case you wanted to lay the case flat, like after build, or even during build, once you laid the case on the side, you might have already scratched it. And once you remove the feet from their original position and then lift the case back up to install them on the back panel, it will scratch again. And let me tell you, that silver Be Quiet strip going around is really prone to scratches. Use a carpet. Do as I say, not as I did. Anyway, the Light-Based 900FX is not only about that one key feature, so let's cover everything else too. Both side panels are attached in the back using a catching screw, and they can be removed by slightly pulling on them before lifting them. This method isn't particularly great. There are very small metal knobs that are falling into position, which is great if the case is lying flat and you're doing the panel on top. But if it is standing like upright and you're doing one of the sides, it's just not that easy to get the angle right. The smaller panels, or the ones that were originally top and bottom, have one catching screw, and they are kept in using plastic hooks, which might be older and like plastic, but it does feel much easier to use. If you want to maximize your access, you can also remove the front glass panel. This one is secured using 2 screws, and then you just lift it up. Inside, as said before, it's just a fish tank. just a really big one. We got every motherboard under the sun, from mini ITX all the way up to E80X. We got up to 190mm high CPU air coolers, and for the GPU, oh man, up to 505mm long cores and up to 195mm deep. So absolutely no worries here about anything that's out right now. And in fact, Be Quiet reused that built-in horizontal GPU mode. You can remove everything that's holding the PCIe slots in place and then reinstall them or it the other way around, and voila, horizontal GPU, just bring your own riser. On the other side of the case, the fun continues. This side is covered by a gigantic mesh panel, covered by a very delicate fabric mesh sheet in the frame, more on that later. We got a power supply that can technically be up to 290mm long with cables, so you're looking at below 250 if you want to feel comfortable, or 225 if you ask Be Quiet. A thing I just wanted to briefly mention, because I have just no clue about it. Above the power supply spot we got this bracket. I have no idea why it's there. Sure, it kinda keeps the PSU from falling out, but let's be honest, nobody else has that hook, and it was never necessary to begin with. And for some reason, the PSU installation is the only topic that is not mentioned at all in Be Quiet's manual, where usually their manuals are like really freaking complete, and here is just missing. And even then, that bracket has a bunch of holes that look like screw holes above it, so there is some level of function, but it's not even mentioned in the explosion graph, so just no clue. Maybe it has a function, maybe not, or the assembly line just added it to give me a headache. Who knows? Anyway, right below the power supply, we got something I'm just not a big fan of. Drives. Now, generally, I'm just not a big fan of using 2.5 or 3.5 inch drives in a PC. It's just not my thing, but I can give credit when something is made in a good way. Don't worry, it won't happen here. We got this cage, which can technically house up to 2 3.5 and 4 2.5 inch drives. The problem is just that you won't get the hard drive cage out. Yeah, I kid you not. You are supposed to unscrew the entire cage, remove the whole thing, then remove each individual hard drive cage to install a disk, and then do everything in reverse again. If I need to remove the entire thing, why is the cage in there in the first place? At this point, I'm just quicker writing my stuff down on a sheet of paper. But the worst thing for me, there is only one. The other one has to be bought separately. So by default, you got an empty hole. I was a big fan of what Be Quiet did in the past, where they had that stackable drive cage, because there you could just stack as many as you want, but you would never start off with one missing. If you needed more, you could buy more and then stack the mountain higher, that's up to you, but you never end up with an empty hole in the case. Not here. Here, you start with an empty spot that isn't really usable unless you remove the entire thing. I just don't get that part. For me, they could have just not included the whole thing in the first place and sold everything as an add-on. Yeah, but that's maybe just me. So, out of the box, using this half-finished box of nightmares, 1 3.5 inch and 2 2.5 inch drives. One inside and one on top of the cage. And for the folks that need more SSDs, you got 2 more 2.5 inch spots on this cable hiding plate. Just make sure to leave enough space for your cables. You know, no need to rip anything apart. And now coming to the cooling, because apart from the triple design thing, that's another point where Be Quiet did great. In total we got 10 140 or 120mm fan spots in this case. 3 on the top, 3 in the bottom, or left, right, depending on how the case is used. 3 on the side, or bottom, like in my case, and 1 in the back. Ha! That one is always in the back. Now, if you count all of this together, there is a shit ton of air moving through this case. With the FX version of this, you will also get the 4 140mm Lightwing LX fans included, 3 reverse spinning intake 140s on the side, and 1 regular spinning as exhaust in the back. And these fans are really not that bad. They aren't amazing, don't get me wrong, that's for sure, but they are definitely okay for the average build. Like, there is not really a need to replace them for both amount of air and noise. And for the best working fan configuration, I found that the usual wisdom applies here too. If the case is standing, bottom and side should be going in, top and back should be going out. Just the usual route. And this also works great if the case is lying flat. In that case, you just got a horizontal stream just blowing through the case with some additional coming from the bottom. It also is kind of cool. The only config where you might want to switch things up is in reverse, because there the whole thing is like upside down. So air from top to bottom might be a problem, so you might want to turn all the fans around. In general, I'm quite happy with how Be Quiet handled the cooling inside of the case. Not a single fan spot is blocking any of the components, every single one is so far away from anything that might cause any trouble. Yeah, it's basically impossible to create a problem in here. But they did go overboard in a way that just stops making sense. The top and bottom, or left and right spots, depending, yeah, I know, it's complicated, but the top and bottom spots are on this bracket, which is removable using these two screws. Now, on paper, that's fine. In the usual case layout, this might even be something good. But in here, it's just a feature that I see as kinda unnecessary, because during building, you've got so much space, you don't really need to remove them. And if you think that through, there is no way of installing the fans on the outside, so you will never use a screwdriver on the inside. Let's say you have a radiator and you're installing the radiator, but the fan's already pre-installed on the radiator, so you're just mounting the radiator to the bracket, which is also, again, from this side, so you kinda never need to remove it in the first place. And usually I just don't, and I give the manufacturer credit that I could do it. But this thing is designed in a way that on the other side of both brackets, we got this hole. The problem is that hole is not aligned with that one single line rail on the outer side, which means that no matter which fan I want to install on those brackets, I need to remove the whole thing, even if I got the space to work with it. It kind of reminds me of something. That's such an unnecessary thing. If that hole would be like half a centimeter bigger, boom, solved. Optional feature. But no, right now it's a necessary step. But I'm not done. Not only do we have a bracket on top of the outside chassis of the case, but on top of that we got another bracket. This is the outer part. It's quite sturdy, has to be, the case might be standing on it, and Be Quiet can even be kind of proud how they made this one. It's made out of metal and it feels very good. No, my issue is on the other side, where we got this inner plastic part. On top of that, we got a fabric dust filter. Again, it feels nice, somewhat easy to clean. You just push very slightly on the ends to release the hooks and then you pull it out. And believe me, release the hooks before pulling it out. Trust me. And now let's think about this. We got a fan, which is screwed onto a bracket, which is screwed onto the chassis, on top of which we mount a piece of plastic using plastic hooks, which houses another piece of plastic containing a dust filter, all of which is then glued into a piece of metal that makes the outer shelf of the case. Yeah, that's a bit much, don't you think? And ignoring my high-level nagging here, there are actually two concerns about this approach. Okay, maybe three. Forcing me to remove this is just annoying. One is the connection point between the piece of fabric and the plastic inner part. It's plastic on top of plastic without dampening. Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is just not what I expect from a Be Quiet case. Now, to be very clear, I wasn't capable of creating this rattling noise using fans alone, and the ones I use in the bottom here are 2100 RPM fans. It doesn't just happen, but this is still not cool. And the other part is about potential fan restriction. Now, having this fuck ton of rails isn't necessarily the best thing for your fans, sure, but this is still very far away from as restrictive as what other competitors try to pull off. But if you look closely, there is a bunch of U-shaped rails that are exposed and oriented towards the inner part of the case. And now just imagine a fan blowing an airstream straight into that. I don't have to tell you that this is a stupid idea. Again, to be clear, very minimal, this isn't going to create temperature augmenting turbulences. It's just unnecessary. And unfortunately, it's untestable with the equipment that I got, but I think we can all agree that having a U-shaped piece of plastic in front of an exhaust fan isn't the smartest move. Enough of the nagging, let's go back to positive stuff. Water cooling. The case supports 3 different radiator spots, a 420 in the top, a 360 on the side and another 420 in the bottom, and they can be really thick. Be Quiet says it's up to 75mm total in the top, 60 in the bottom, but do keep in mind that their measurements end where the motherboard starts, and in reality you could stack the bottom one until you hit the GPU. The sidewise is even cooler because these spots are pushed so much towards the back, you can do up to 72mm thick monsters until you start hitting that GPU bracket, or if you don't need it, 98mm until you start hitting the GPU itself. Of course, all of these values including the fans. Oh, it's actually 4 radiator spots. The back of course also supports the regular 120 or 140. So as a case, this thing can do both air and water, dual 420 and a 360 radiator, all in one build, and depending on the thickness of each rad, it is doable and very impressive. Speaking of nice things, the included GPU anti-sag bracket. You can rotate it, extend it, move it, or remove the whole structure in case you don't need it. Really cool, surprisingly strong hinges, great job. And the same goes for the cable management. You got these enormous holes all around the case, and they got these even bigger pieces of rubber on them. And they are so cool and so new, I don't even know how they work. Like, for each one, you can press them in, or you can pull them back out and lay the piece of rubber onto the cable, creating like a rubber sheet on the cable. I don't know which way is right, but they both work. And also quite cool, for the folks going with E80X boards, Be Quiet thought about you too. To the left of the side intake, you got another set of holes, just for you. And even the guys that want to do the new zero cabling thing, according to Be Quiet, the holes are aligned for that too. I just don't have a board to test that. Sorry. One weird outliner is the top CPU power cable hole, or all of these holes. There is just no rubber there, no idea why. But in my case, this didn't really matter that much because the AIO hides the holes anyway. In the back, the trend continues, just not as big. You got all of this space here in the center that you can use to stuff your cables in. And this works fine combined with the Velcro ties, just a bit small for a Be Quiet case if you ask me. But if you remove the drive cage, you unlock this whole stuffing area, which is probably what I would do. And now switching to I/O. From a technical standpoint, it's great. Two USB 3.2 Type A's, a 3.2 Gen 2 Type C combined audio in and out, and a gigantic start button combined with a reset and ARGB button. All fine and well, right below the front glass, so easy to reach and always pointing towards you no matter the orientation you use the case in. And if you ask yourself which is the ARGB button and which is the reset button is the one with the nipple. No idea why that's a thing, and I did it wrong for many times. But yeah, it's the one with the nipple. Speaking of ARGB, yes, next to the I/O we got these gorgeous looking straight lines going all around three sides of the case, each of which contains an ARGB strip illuminating the case from like every possible side. And this not only creates a really cool design overall, but this works in every orientation. Standing, you got an underglow, and lying flat, you got that squarish circle going all around, looking really cool. And the Be Quiet logos on the left and right side, in my case right now, and if you are standing, it's just on top. The Be Quiet logo is also shining in white. And speaking of cool things, all of that ARGB power is coming from not one, but two combined ARGB and PWM splitters. One is located at the top and one at the bottom of the case, each containing 6 ports for basically each. So in total you've got 12 4-pin PWM ports and 12 3-pin ARGB ports, all powered using 2 SATA power plugs and a single PWM and ARGB input. Really cool, handy, and you don't need any splitters at all, considering that you have more ports than the case can handle in the first place. And yes, there is an included ARGB controller in there with 22 different modes, and if DIY is your thing, 3 seconds push to switch to 3-pin connection from your motherboard. But as a side note, no idea what's up lately with Be Quiet's ARGB implementation. All of the ARGB that you are seeing is coming from a single input, except for the RAM of course, but the software is set to blast the same color as static onto everything. The RAM water block and 120mm Be Quiet fans share the same color, makes sense. But the 140mm included fans are definitely not the same thing, and the strip going around all of the case, yeah, that's like something in between. And everything is hooked up to the same ARGB hub, or everything is distributed across the 2 hubs, which are using the same connection. And it's not like the 140s are on one hub and the 120s are on the other one. That's not the case. Like, we got one 140 on the bottom and 3 140s in the top, and it just doesn't make sense. But to end the hubs, they are a great addition. Just keep in mind to install all the PWM connections first. You won't get them in once the 3 pins are in there. And another side note, on one of my PWM headers, one of the pins came totally bent. It's no biggie, just bend it back. But if your fan isn't doing what you are telling him to, maybe you have a bent pin. So how did our build go? Great. I did this black and white themed build. Working inside the case was as easy as it gets. Some smaller details, which I already mentioned, like the necessity to remove the fan bracket, which was just annoying. And in my opinion, the plate for the SSDs could get a bit stronger mounting. It pops off too easily if you stuff the area behind it with cables. But all in all, it was great. And performance-wise, I was impressed. The exact build you see here, so a 14700K paired with a 4080 Phantom and the Be Quiet Light Loop 360. And with that setup, everything on auto, we never reached 90 degrees on the package on a 250 watts workload with CPU burner, which is great. The GPU stopped at 52 degrees on Firmark 4K all-in. So performance-wise, it's great. And if you look at how much smoke accumulates inside of the case, it's clearly positive pressure in my case. So 3 140s and 3 120s blowing in, whereas only 3 120s are blowing out through a radiator combined with a 140, so clearly positive. But I like that, it's less dust in the case. Now, a good advice I wanted to give anybody who wants to get one of these: be cautious when you move or turn the case around. Of course, do it on a carpet. This silver line here scratches very easily, but if the bottom and the top are, or left and right, are removed and you make it stand upright, you'll end up putting the case on the front glass if that's still in. I never broke it, for now, but a few times I didn't have that in mind, and the sound when it like came down, I thought I had it, but yeah. But this does kind of speak on the build quality of this thing. Sure, the rattling part is annoying, really annoying, but except for that, the metalwork on the case is great. Nothing wiggles, everything is reinforced, it's just a well-made case. So overall, great experience, and that's also my overall opinion with the case. Sure, I got my nitpickiness going today, but apart from some slightly weird stuff, and mildly unthought of theoretical stuff, I like it. And I especially like the fact that you can just turn it around without having to remove half the interior. And that's new. And as far as I'm concerned, I am all for a flat-lying layout. It looks cool. So from my side, absolute recommendation with a little asterisk. This thing is big, so be sure that you can have that thing on the table or on the floor. Because it's just enormous. Price-wise, it's a bit hefty. I can get one right now for 219 euros, which that's a lot. It is understandable from Be Quiet side if you compare it to a dark base, considering that both are somewhat in the same league. They are just like a different type. So yeah, there's that. A small detail that I just wanted to mention at the end: Be Quiet did a good job with protection. The case itself does come like any budget Be Quiet case does, but I don't really care for the expensive fabric bag. But what I do care about is Be Quiet stuffing a piece of rubber in between both glass panels. That can actually prevent some damage, so good job there. But okay, this should be all for the new Be Quiet light-based 900FX, a very impressive case. Slightly expensive, but hey, at least you can change the look within a minute. At this point, a huge thank you to Be Quiet for sending this one over. Oh, on a side note, we have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And we got channel membership, so if you are planning to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's one way to go. But if not, I'm also releasing the content to all members 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Except for the NDA stuff, because, you know, I don't want to get sued. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to hire somebody to explain the logic behind Be Quiet's lineups. A light base is lower end than a shadow base, but in front of a pure base. But for fans, a light wing is suddenly higher up than a shadow wing. Huh? I just give up on understanding that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the Height Y60. Also a fish tank, just way, way smaller. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.